So imagine that you wake up and you're not in your bed at home. You're in a hospital bed. You can only see those terrible, awful fluorescent lights, and you can't move. You're strapped to the bed. You can only move your neck. This was the situation my father found himself in after he had had a grand mal seizure. He looked over and saw a man who was clearly his doctor, and a woman and another man. And the doctor asked him, "Mike, do you know what day it is?" And my dad is still trying to think of the last thing he can remember, and he's coming up empty. The doctor asks, "Mike, do you know who this person is?" He gestures to the woman. And then he asks, "Mike, do you know who this person is?" And gestures to the other man. My dad answers no. Shakes his head. He's still having trouble forming words at this point. So the second man becomes visibly distraught and runs out of the room. The doctor pulls out a picture of two small children and asks, "Mike, do you know who these kids are?" And my dad's thinking, "Fuck, those are probably my kids." And he shakes his head. He said, "I don't know who they are." And the doctor goes, "Mike, do you know your name?" And at this point, my dad doesn't know where he is, how long he's been there, who he is. But he just gets so frustrated and he says, "Fuck, you've been calling me Mike like 4 times now, so that must be my name. My name must be Mike." And my mom, the woman standing next to the doctor, goes, That's him. That's my husband. He might not know where he is, but that's Mike." I've always been kind of jealous of my dad in that he seems to have an unspoken control over things, the way that dads do. He seemed to have this control over everything, and the fact that there was a time in his life that he didn't have control over his own body or his own mind is really alien to me, because if my dad didn't have control over himself, then I recently asked him what he thinks caused his seizures, because there was no history of it before him, and there's nothing wrong with his CAT scans or anything like that. According to his neurologist, he was fine. He was fine. So I asked him what he thinks caused it, and he thinks it was stress. He was running a business at the time, and he found out that his partner was embezzling from him. So he thinks it's stress, but there's no medical evidence to back up the fact that my dad had seizures for many years. He was heavily medicated for a long time, and then he just stopped taking it. He stopped taking his medication, and he was fine. My father has had 2 grand mal seizures in his life, and many smaller seizures. Small seizures usually last only a couple minutes, generally very peaceful. I can only remember one instance where my dad was visibly having a seizure, and it was very peaceful. He just looked kind of zoned out. The first time he had a major grand mal seizure, he came out to our foyer, and he says that he was butt naked, but I think my memory edited some underwear onto him. But he came out into the foyer and just started screaming at me and my younger brother. And he was yelling, and apparently it was gibberish. I have no memory of this event at all, but apparently it was just gibberish, and he was very combative. He didn't strike me or Braden, but that's when we knew something was wrong. I remember we used to get dropped off for school by my dad. My mom would work at the hospital during the day, so my dad was a stay-at-home dad. And he would pick us up and drop us off after school. And I remember for a long time we were dropped off in the back of school. And I didn't think anything of it, but apparently my dad had a seizure on the front steps in front of the school. And it was very peaceful. He says it was an out-of-body experience. He was just looking down at us. But after that, the other parents began to worry about us and wonder if it was safe for him to pick us up. And he just wasn't. He wasn't gonna give up taking his kids to school. So that was that. As of June of 2015, my father has not had a seizure for 15 years.